Alright, today we're looking at ugBasic version 1.13.1, and this is a retro basic compiler used to create games for retro computers and retro consoles. So things like the Commodore 64 computer, Commodore 128, uh, ColecoVision game console, and various others, but I'm just going to focus on those to demonstrate here. And first thing you need to know is how to get ugBasic. And the simplest way is just to go to itch.io and do a search for ugBasic, and you download the IDE. Now, if you try to go through the program, it's basically a little scavenger hunt. So you have to go to help here, about ugBasic, and you won't see this unless you actually have downloaded it. But if you manage to find the official website, we can go to download here. If we click IDE and you select ugBasic IDE website, it takes you to itch.io. So just save yourself all that and just go directly to itch.io, do a search for ugBasic, and that's the easiest way to download it. Now, this is an open source project, and there are, if you go to the GitHub site, there's lots of source code. I don't believe any of the source code is for the IDE, but it's for the separate uh, build tools. And I'm not even sure if it's all the compilers. I think some of the compilers may be other compiler projects that have been integrated into this. It's kind of hard to tell how everything is organized, but if we look at the actual IDE here and go into the configuration, we can see some hints how everything is put together. So if we look here, there's let's look at the ColecoVision. There's a completely separate compiler for each target, basically. And you have to supply your own emulators. It doesn't include a built-in emulator. So there's a configuration for the emulators as well. So I've configured Blue MSX for MSX computers and the ColecoVision, so it does both. And I already had VICE installed, that's Commodore 64, 128, and various other Commodore computers. Anyway, once you have this configured, you could actually start running the demo programs or the examples. Now, before we get to running any of these, what I was interested to see if there was anything that was made with ugBasic that was impressive, and it looks like so far there's a Soko Band game that runs on the Commodore 64. So this is how that looks like. And the author of ugBasic created what looks like a Connect 4 type game. Let's find that. Here we go. It's called 4 Gravity, but it's basically a Connect 4 version. And so there's a video. Here's some screenshots of it. So this is how it looks on the Commodore 64 here. And so I have to blow up everything because I can't see very well. So VIC-20. And this is all from one source code base. And that's also on GitHub, so you can take a look at it. It's all here. So you can study this to see how you can make a multi-target game from the source code. Anyway, let's just run some of the example programs to see how all this works. So I have several loaded. Let's just run. Let's run this one. And so you could do compile and select what you want to compile for. Let's choose ColecoVision and compilation OK, no errors. And if we select run ColecoVision and select our emulator here, now you won't see it, but it popped the emulator on my other screen. Let me move it over here. And let's just restart it so you can see the whole thing. So that's how it looks, the output for the ColecoVision. Let's minimize this and create this for the Commodore 64. And bring that into view. It takes a little while for the Commodore 64 version. I don't know why, but if we select Commodore 128, it actually comes up faster. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. And here we go. So it's the same program, but for the Commodore 64. Now, what's a little frustrating is that not all the example programs work on both the targets that I have. Most of them look like they've been tested and are working on the Commodore 64, and some of them don't look like they work on anything at this point. Maybe they worked on an earlier version but don't work on the current version. So let's go to the next one here. I'm just going to go ColecoVision. And so this just draws a circle. I'm going to close these down as I run them. So this one, we get an error, cannot cast types, S word. I'm not quite sure what needs to be changed here to make it run. I thought maybe it was because I was compiling for ColecoVision, then I tried compiling for Commodore 64, but we also get the same error. Let's try different, let's go for 128. It doesn't seem to matter, it just looks like it doesn't compile. So it looks like either this is, yeah, this is probably in Italian. And I don't know Italian, but it looks like it just demonstrates how to use the palette from the English heading here. All right, let's close that down since it doesn't work, or it doesn't work with the current version. Let's try this Starfield example. So this is taking a little bit of time to load, but I ran it before and it's normal. It'll eventually get there. And nothing, let's put it aside, and I'm gonna run it for the Commodore 64 because I'm pretty sure that worked before. All right, so it looks like it works for the Commodore 64, but not the ColecoVision. It doesn't look like it's getting anywhere with the ColecoVision, so let's close that down. And let's see if this works for both. So this just draws a couple of boxes with a different pattern for the border. See how that looks on the Commodore 64. Let's see if this works for the Commodore 128 as well. Most of the things I've tried for the Commodore 128 don't work. This one does, so it actually loaded pretty quick. Let's try something with sound. Let's try to load something with an image. So this example doesn't work for the Coleco. There's a little comment here that says exclude Coleco. So let's it takes a while. And there we go. There's an eye. It's black and white or gray. Let's see if this works for the 128. And no, it doesn't. Let's run for MSX. And so it works with MSX, but the colors don't look right. So just from the example programs, it seems like there's a lot of work in progress for the different targets. It looks like the most reliable one is for the Commodore 64 so far. What would be nice if there was some sort of table that told us which commands or features work in whatever targets. That way you don't have to do a lot of guesswork if you wanted to try and actually use this. But it's an interesting project. It looks like it's fun to play around with. At least I had some fun trying to figure things out. It would be nice if the editor had a way of increasing the font size. I'm getting a little old and it's hard to see, especially without my glasses, but I could always use Visual Studio Code to edit the source code and bring it into this to do the compilation or configure Visual Studio Code to actually use the command line compilers, which is something I might consider doing if after a little bit more testing this proves to be a good basic to play around with. So let's close all these down. And so there's a lot of example programs. So I figured by looking at the examples directory that all the code that worked for the targets would be in their own folders, but it seems like all these are just empty. They just contain the images, not the actual source code. So if we look in the Coleco one, we can see some graphic files, but no actual source code. So the actual source code is outside. It's in the main examples directory, and you kind of have to figure out what it works for. So there's lots here. You might have to do a lot of testing to figure out, what it'll work for, but I guess that's the fun of some of these open source projects. Anyway, I'll leave it up to this point because I can't figure anything else to add to this video. Maybe in the next one I'll have some interesting discoveries. But for now, I'll end it here.